Jacob, you can't be serious, I said, my voice barely a whisper as I stared at him in disbelief. We were sitting in our new living room, surrounded by boxes, the smell of fresh paint still clinging to the air. We've been in this house for a week, our dream house. I could hardly believe I was even having this conversation. I don't know what else to do, Alyssa, Jacob sighed, his hands running through his hair in frustration. You know how my mom is. She's not going to let this go until I do something about it. So, what? We just hand over our home to your sister and her husband? Are you really considering this? I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and anger. No, I don't want to give them the house. But Mom. She keeps saying how much they need help. Sarah has 6 kids now. Dave can't find a job, Jacob replied, his eyes full of exhaustion. He looked as though he had aged years in the span of just a few days. I stood up abruptly, the chair screeching across the hardwood floor. Jacob, this is insane. We've worked for this house, we've saved for years. And now your mom just thinks she can swoop in and demand we give it to your sister because her husband would rather play video games than get a job? My voice was rising now, the frustration bubbling over. Alyssa, please. I'm not saying we'll do it. I'm just. You're just what? Entertaining the idea? Giving it some thought? Jacob, this is our home. Ours. What about us? What about the life we've been building together? Why is it always about your sister and her needs? He rubbed his face with both hands, clearly at a loss for how to respond. I know it's not fair, but my family. They rely on me. They always have. Exactly. They rely on you, Jacob, because you let them. For years, I've watched you bend over backward for Sarah and your mom. And now, they think it's okay to ask for our house? Our house, Jacob. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I fought them back, refusing to let the anger be drowned by sadness. Just then, Jacob's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and let out a weary sigh. It's Mom, he said, looking up at me, pleading with his eyes for some kind of understanding. Of course it is, I muttered under my breath, folding my arms and turning my back to him. Mom, Jacob answered, his voice strained. Yes, I've been thinking about it. No, I haven't decided anything yet. There was a pause, and I could hear his mother's voice screeching through the phone, even though I couldn't make out the words. Jacob's face grew tighter with each second, his hand gripping the phone like a lifeline. No, Mom, I'm not letting Alyssa control the situation. This isn't about her, it's about us. We just moved into this house. I can't, he paused again, listening to his mother's rant on the other end. Mom, they're my kids. I get it. But Sarah and Dave, no, I'm not saying it's their fault, his voice wavered, clearly trying to keep calm. Yes, I know. 6 kids. Yes. I get that Dave's struggling, but I couldn't listen anymore. I grabbed the nearest box and began unpacking it furiously, slamming plates onto the counter. The sound echoed through the room, but I didn't care. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell at his mother through the phone. Jacob's voice was getting quieter now, more resigned. Okay, fine. I'll come over later. We can talk in person. Yes, I'll bring Alyssa. He hung up, his hand still clutching the phone, knuckles white. I spun around to face him. You're not seriously going over there, are you? She wants to talk, Jacob said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I don't care what she wants, I snapped. She's overstepping, Jacob. She's always overstepping, and you're letting her. I'm not going. He looked up at me, and I could see the battle raging behind his eyes. Alyssa, please. Just come with me. Let's hear them out. Hear them out? What could they possibly say that will make this okay? Your sister has no right to ask for our house. None. She and Dave need to figure out their own lives, and it's not our responsibility to fix their mess. We've done enough for them, Jacob. You've done enough. I know, but... No. I cut him off, my voice trembling with fury. You're not hearing me. This is our home, and I'm not going to let them guilt trip you into giving it up just because they've made poor decisions. Jacob stood there, defeated, his shoulders slumped. I don't want to lose you over this, Alyssa. And you won't, I said, my voice softening for a moment. But you need to stand up to your mother and your sister. This has to stop. He nodded slowly, but I wasn't sure if he truly understood. His family had always been his blind spot, and I feared that this time, it might cost us everything. As I watched him stand there, torn between his loyalty to his family and the life we were building together, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that this was far from over. The next day, I reluctantly agreed to go with Jacob to his mother's house. My stomach churned the entire drive. I knew this conversation wasn't going to be easy. Every time we had to deal with his mother or sister, it felt like I was stepping into a battlefield. And today, I wasn't sure if we'd come out unscathed. You sure you're ready for this? Jacob asked, glancing over at me as he pulled into the driveway. Do I have a choice? I replied, my voice flat. Jacob sighed but didn't say anything more. We both knew what was waiting for us inside. As we walked to the front door, I could already hear the chaos. The familiar shrieks of Sarah's kids filled the air. The smell of something burnt drifted from the kitchen. It was always like this. Their home was a tornado of noise, stress, and dysfunction, and yet, they expected us to come in and fix everything. The door swung open before we even knocked. Jacob's mom, Gloria, stood there, arms crossed, a tight smile on her lips. Jacob. Alyssa, she said, her eyes flicking to me, not bothering to hide her disdain. Glad you both could make it. I forced a smile, though it was more of a grimace. Of course. She didn't invite us in, she simply turned and walked back into the house, expecting us to follow. I glanced at Jacob, who gave me a helpless look, and we stepped inside. The living room was a disaster zone. Toys were scattered everywhere, the TV blaring some cartoon at an ear-splitting volume. Sarah sat on the couch, looking exhausted, her newborn crying in her arms while the other 5 kids ran wild. Dave, her husband, was nowhere to be seen. Not that I was surprised, he always managed to disappear whenever things got tense. Jacob's sister, Sarah, looked up when she saw us. Hey, Jake. Hey, Alyssa, she said, her voice tired but hopeful. She gave me a weak smile, as if we were about to have a friendly chat. Hey, Sarah, Jacob said, his voice softer than I would have liked. He glanced around the room. Where's Dave? Oh, he's in the basement. Playing his game. You know, he's been really stressed lately, Sarah explained, as if that somehow justified everything. Stressed? I couldn't stop myself from speaking, the sarcasm dripping from my voice. What's he stressed about? His high score? Jacob shot me a look, warning me to keep my temper in check. But I was beyond frustrated. Here she was, sitting in a wrecked house, taking care of 6 kids, while her husband hid in the basement playing video games. And somehow, they thought they were entitled to our house. Gloria, who had been lingering near the kitchen, finally spoke up. All right, let's sit down and talk about this. We all sat around the dining table, though I could feel the tension buzzing between us. Gloria folded her arms, her face hard and unreadable. Jacob, you know how much Sarah's struggling. This house is too small for them. It's chaos here. The kids have no space. Dave is trying to find work, but it's been tough. Mom, I understand that, Jacob said, his voice calm, but there was an edge to it. But what you're asking? It's not realistic. Alyssa and I just bought our house. We've worked hard for it. We've worked really hard for it, I added, glaring at Gloria. Gloria pursed her lips. I'm not saying you haven't worked hard. But Sarah needs help. She has 6 kids, Jacob. You two don't have any yet. It's not like you need that big house. I clenched my fists under the table. The audacity was breathtaking. Excuse me? Whether or not we have kids doesn't change the fact that it's our house. Our dream house. Why should we have to give it up just because Sarah and Dave can't get their lives together? That's not fair, Sarah said softly, her eyes welling with tears. We've had a lot of bad luck, Alyssa. Bad luck? I repeated, incredulous. Sarah, Dave spends all his time gaming in the basement while you handle everything upstairs. It's not bad luck. It's choices. And we shouldn't have to suffer because of them. Gloria's face turned red. Alyssa, that's enough. We're family. Family helps each other. That's how it works. No, Gloria, I said, my voice rising. That's how your family works. You guilt and manipulate people into giving up what they've earned to support others who won't pull their weight. But we're not doing that anymore. Jacob cleared his throat, clearly trying to calm the situation. Mom, I love Sarah, and I want to help her. But Alyssa's right. We can't just give up our home. There has to be another solution. Gloria's eyes narrowed. I knew it. This is Alyssa's influence. Ever since you married her, you've been pulling away from us. She's got you wrapped around her finger. I felt my face flush with anger. This isn't about me controlling Jacob. It's about boundaries, Gloria. You can't keep asking him to solve everyone's problems. We're his family too. Jacob leaned forward, his hands gripping the table. Mom, stop. This isn't Alyssa's fault. I made the decision, and I agree with her. We're not giving them the house. Sarah and Dave need to figure out their own situation. Sarah, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. But Jake. We don't have anywhere else to go. Jacob's expression softened, but he remained firm. Sarah, I'll help you in other ways. We can look into housing options. Maybe even help financially, but giving up our house? That's not happening. Gloria stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't believe this. You're turning your back on your own blood. No, Mom, Jacob said, standing up as well. I'm setting boundaries. We've done enough. For the first time, I saw Jacob take a real stand, and it gave me hope. But I knew this wasn't over. Gloria wasn't the type to give up easily, and I could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. As we left the house, the tension between us lingered like a dark cloud. This was far from resolved, but for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could finally put an end to the constant demands. But I also knew Gloria, and she wouldn't take defeat lightly. The car ride home was heavy with silence, thick with everything unsaid. Jacob's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw set in frustration. I stared out the window, watching the world blur by as I tried to process everything that had just happened. It wasn't just the demand for our house, it was years of this, years of Gloria and Sarah expecting Jacob to swoop in and fix everything. The guilt, the manipulation, the constant taking without any regard for what it was doing to our relationship. Jacob broke the silence first, his voice quiet but tense. I didn't expect it to get that bad. Did you really think your mom would just back down? I asked, not bothering to hide the exhaustion in my voice. He sighed deeply. No, I guess not. But I don't know, Alyssa. It's hard. I've always been the one to help. And they, my family, they rely on me. They rely on you because you let them, I said softly but firmly. Jacob, I love you, but this can't go on. Your mom and Sarah, they're used to having you as a safety net. But we have our own life now. We have to come first. I know. He nodded, staring straight ahead. I know you're right. But it's not easy. It's never going to be easy, I replied. But you saw what happened back there. Your mom. She's not going to stop unless you make her stop. Jacob didn't respond right away. He just kept driving, his eyes locked on the road as if it held the answers he was searching for. When we finally pulled into the driveway of our house, he turned off the car but didn't get out. I'm going to have to talk to them again, aren't I? He said quietly. I hesitated, not wanting to push too hard, but knowing that the conversation wasn't over. Yes. But this time, Jacob, you need to set firm boundaries. They can't keep doing this to us. To you. He nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping under the weight of the decision he knew he had to make. You're right. I'll talk to them. Again. But I'm scared it'll end badly. I'm scared too, I admitted. But we can't keep sacrificing our happiness for their mistakes. We sat in the car for a long moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. Finally, Jacob opened the door, and we both stepped out into the cool evening air. I watched him, wondering if he truly understood the gravity of the situation. I didn't want to lose him to his family's demands, but I feared that if he didn't stand up to them now, our relationship might never recover. The following week was quiet. Too quiet. Gloria didn't call, and Sarah didn't text. It felt like the calm before a storm, and I knew better than to think they were backing down. Jacob seemed on edge too, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. It came the following Saturday. We were sitting on the back porch, enjoying the rare moment of peace, when Jacob's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and sighed. "It's Mom," he muttered, almost as if he had been expecting it. "I guess I should answer." I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming next. Jacob stood up and walked a few feet away as he answered. I could hear Gloria's voice on the other end, loud and indignant, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. "What do you mean you're coming over?" Jacob said, his voice rising slightly. "No, Mom, we don't need to talk in person. We've already." He paused, listening to her rant. His face tightened with frustration. Fine. Come over if you need to." He hung up, running his hand through his hair. "She's coming over. With Sarah." I felt a wave of dread wash over me. "This isn't going to go well, is it?" "No," Jacob admitted, his voice heavy. "It's not." Less than 20 minutes later, Gloria's car pulled into the driveway, Sarah in tow. I could see the determination on Gloria's face from the window. She wasn't here to negotiate. She was here to win. Jacob opened the door before they even knocked. "Mom, Sarah, we've already talked about this. I don't know what more there is to say." Gloria marched inside without hesitation, Sarah following silently behind her. "There's plenty more to say, Jacob. You're abandoning your family. Sarah needs help, and you're turning your back on her." "I'm not abandoning anyone," Jacob replied, standing firm. "I've offered to help in other ways. But we're not giving you the house. That's final." Gloria's eyes flashed with anger. "Final? Jacob, how can you be so heartless? Your sister has 6 children. She needs a bigger space. You and Alyssa don't even have kids. Why can't you make this sacrifice for family?" "Because it's not our responsibility to fix their problems," Jacob said, his voice growing firmer. "I love Sarah. I want to help her. But giving up our home? That's too much. We've worked for this house." "You've changed, Jacob," Gloria snapped, her gaze flicking toward me with a cold sneer. "Ever since you married her, you've become selfish." I felt the sting of her words, but I refused to engage. This was Jacob's battle to fight. He had to stand up to her, or this would never end. "Mom, this isn't about Alyssa," Jacob said, his voice shaking slightly. "This is about me. I've been helping Sarah for years. And I'm done. We're done. We can't keep living our lives based on what you want." Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jake, I don't know what we're going to do. Dave still hasn't found work, and we're drowning here." "I'm sorry, Sarah," Jacob said, his expression softening for a moment. "But you and Dave have to figure this out. I'll help however I can, but the house is off the table." Gloria's face hardened. "So, that's it? You're choosing her over us?" "I'm choosing myself," Jacob replied, surprising all of us. "I've spent my entire life fixing everyone else's problems. But I have my own life now. I'm not giving that up." For a moment, Gloria just stood there, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then, with a sharp shake of her head, she turned to Sarah. "Let's go. Clearly, we're not welcome here anymore." Sarah cast one last pleading look at Jacob, but when he didn't budge, she followed her mother out the door. As they drove away, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me, though I knew the consequences of this decision were just beginning. Jacob sank down onto the couch, his head in his hands. "I can't believe it came to this." I sat down beside him, placing a hand on his back. "You did the right thing, Jacob. I know it hurts, but it had to be done." He nodded slowly. "I know. It's just hard. We'll get through it," I said softly. "Together." For the first time in a long while, Jacob smiled. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But it felt like the first step toward reclaiming our life. The life we had worked so hard to build. The life that was finally, truly, ours.